Alright, were you able to solve this challenge? If yes, please feel free to skip through this video. If not, then I recommend that you give this article a read on medium.com, and it talks about different patterns using Java. Although the language is different, but you can easily convert this program to Apex as the core logic remains same. You still see different variables and loops here. But for now, let's try to write this solution together. So this is the pattern that we need to generate, and it's called the right star triangle pattern, and you can find it on this Medium article as well. And here we get an integer which defines the number of rows and columns in our pattern. So since it involves looping through the items, we need a loop here. And for this example, we are going to use for loop. So first we need to write a for loop to build our rows. I'm going to call it as row, and the row needs to be equals to 0 because we are going to loop through from 0 to n. So our condition will be row should be less than n. So let's say if the n's value is 5 and we start from 0, so this loop will go for 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So exactly it will run 5 times. And last will be our increment statement, which will be row plus plus. Now here we could simply write a debug statement and print a star, and let's see how it looks. And remember our n's value is 5. So we get 5 stars here. But what about our columns? So this for loop can only generate the rows. It cannot generate the columns. To generate the columns, we need another for loop. And let's write another for loop here. And this time I'm going to call my variable as column. So again we are going to start with 0. For the time being, let's make our condition as similar to what we have for the rows. So column should be less than n, and then column plus plus. And again let's write one more debug statement, and let's see what type of output do we get. This time we get 30 debug statements, and the reason being our outer for loop runs 5 times, and for each execution of this outer for loop, our inner loop runs 5 times as well. So this means for each execution of our outer for loop, we get this debug statement and 5 of these debug statements. So 1 execution and 6 debug statements. So for 5 execution, we get 30 debug statements. But this is not the output that we want. What we want is this pattern. So we are doing something wrong here. So let's ask this question to ourselves. When we are on the first row, do we need to generate 5 columns? And when we are on the second row, do we need to again generate 5 columns? What I think is we only need to generate as many columns as the number of rows. So if we are on the first row, then we only need to generate 1 column. If we are on the second row, then we need to generate 2 columns. If we are on the third row, then 3 columns, and so on. So our number of columns should always be equals to the number of rows. So our condition here, which is column should be less than n, is incorrect. It should be column should be less than or equals to row. So this means if our rows value is 1, then we'll generate 1 column. If rows value is 2, then we'll generate 2 column. So we'll generate equal number of row and columns. Now let's give it another try and check out our output. We again see all the stars, but this time we only get 15 stars, which is exactly there are in this pattern. So our number of stars is correct that we are printing, but our pattern is not. Instead of printing each star in next line, we need to start building these columns. And how can we do that? Remember, whenever you write a debug statement, it prints the character in a new line or in a new log. So somehow we need to generate our pattern first and then we need to put it in a debug statement. So what I'm trying to say here is instead of writing these debug statements multiple times, we only need one debug statement for each row. So we do not need these two debug statements. Rather, we need a debug statement here. Print the pattern here. Because if you notice this pattern, each row has multiple stars. So somehow we need to store these stars in a variable and then we need to pass them to our debug statement. So I'll use a string variable and I'll call it pattern and let's initialize it with a blank value. Now we'll keep on adding the stars in this pattern variable and then in the end we'll print this pattern variable using a debug statement. So let's do that. Now how we will build this pattern? Remember, we need to put as many stars as the row on which we are on. So if we are on row 0, then we only need to put 1 star. If we are on row 2, then we need to put 2 stars. And that is what our inner loop is doing, which is generating these columns. So we are going to put these stars in this pattern variable, or we are going to concatenate these stars with the pattern variable. So initially its value is blank. And when it comes to this for loop, so what we will do is pattern equals to the current value of pattern, which is blank, plus a star. And let's give two space as well so that we get this nice space in between. So when this statement will run for the very first time, what it will do, it will add this blank string with this star. So it will generate this part here. When it will come to the next row, then it will add the stars twice. So every time we'll keep on appending or concatenating these stars on the same pattern variable. Or you can write it with the help of our addition assignment operator as well, which looks like this, if you remember from our previous sessions. So both of these are same thing. So it's up to you which one you want to keep. For now, for the better readability, I'll keep the first statement. And let's run this code once again. This time we get our pattern. Awesome. Good work, guys. Now, just to challenge yourself a bit more, try printing out some of these patterns from this blog article. Maybe like try to print this pyramid pattern first and then move to this diamond shape pattern, which can be very tricky and you may have to play with multiple nested for loops to print this pattern. Doing these multiple challenges, especially these pattern challenges, can definitely improve your logic building and your knowledge about the loops. So keep at it.